It started as a weekend plan. Just a simple 2-day solo hike in a place I hadn't been before, somewhere quiet, somewhere dry, a high desert ridgeline near the Arizona-Utah border. The kind of place where everything is dust-colored. The sky, the dirt, even the plants. Scrub brush, sandstone, and little lizards darting through cracks. I'd done solo hikes before, plenty of them. I always prepared well. This one was supposed to be easy. I chose a rarely used trail I found on a topographic map. One that followed a ridgeline for several miles and looped down into a small canyon with a spring at the bottom. The spring was the key part. That's where I'd refill my water. I didn't want to carry 4 liters the whole way. I started early on Saturday, parked the car on a patch of gravel where the road faded into wilderness. The sun had just come up. It was still cool, and the light was that soft kind that makes everything feel gentle and manageable. The trail was faint but real, a ribbon of flattened sand between the rocks. Someone had walked it before me probably years ago, but not many had since. The ridgeline climb was slow but steady. I was sweating hard within the first hour. Even that early, the desert heats up fast, and there's no real shade out there. Just low, twisted junipers that don't give you much. My GPS tracker was clipped to my pack. I had paper maps too, just in case. I knew the spring was maybe 10 miles in. That was my halfway mark. I planned to get there by afternoon, set up camp nearby, and hike back the next morning. Around midday, the trail began to thin. The rocks got rougher. The ridgeline widened, less like a spine and more like a plateau. That's when I noticed how quiet it had gotten. No wind, no birds. Even the bugs seemed absent. Just sun, silence, and heat. I checked my GPS again. The line on the map said I was close to the junction where I'd cut down into the canyon. But on the ground, nothing looked like a trail anymore. Just rocks and gullies and endless scrub. The world had spread out and swallowed the path. I circled for a bit, scanning for footprints or cairns, but there was nothing. Still, the canyon was supposed to be southeast of the ridge, so I aimed that way. I figured I could drop down, find the stream, refill, and pick up the loop trail from there. But I didn't find a canyon. Not a real one, anyway. Just more dry rock, more gentle slopes that teased at being paths and then dead-ended at sheer cliffs or thick brush. An hour passed, then another. I had already drunk more than half my water. That bothered me, but I told myself I was close. Just over the next rise, just around the next outcrop. But the spring never came. When I finally admitted that I was off course, it was nearly 4 p.m., and the sun had taken on that low, hot orange angle that meant I didn't have much daylight left. I sat on a slab of rock and looked around, trying to match what I saw to the map. But the ground didn't line up with anything. There were no landmarks, just endless similar ridges. Too many draws, too many little drainages that all bent the wrong way. I decided to backtrack, retrace my steps, head back up to the top of the ridge where I last knew I was on the path. But climbing back was slower than I expected. My legs were heavier. My head felt warm in a strange way, like the heat had gotten inside, and I had about a cup of water left. I made it halfway up before the sun dropped behind the ridge and the light went flat. No clouds, just darkness sliding in. I found a patch of soft dirt beneath a juniper and set up camp. No tent, just my mat and sleeping bag. I lay there as the stars came out, trying not to panic. I didn't want to use my emergency beacon. Not yet. That felt like admitting real failure, and I was still thinking I could fix this. Still thought I could find the trail in the morning. Just needed to sleep, get up early, and move before the heat kicked in again. But I didn't sleep much. The cold came fast. Desert nights are brutal like that. Hot as hell all day, freezing by midnight. I had a decent bag, but not for temps that low. I shivered most of the night. Every sound out there felt sharper. The dry creak of branches, the far-off crack of shifting stone. Once I thought I heard footsteps, but when I sat up with my flashlight, there was nothing, just open land and dark brush. I drank the last of my water at dawn. The morning light brought clarity but no comfort. My mouth was already dry, my lips cracked at the corners. My head throbbed faintly, I packed fast and climbed to the highest point I could see. From up there, the land looked even more brutal. No trails, just cracked earth and low hills in every direction. But far off to the west, maybe 2 miles, I saw something that made my stomach flip. A glint. It was faint but real. Something reflective. Metal. That meant people. Maybe a vehicle. Maybe a building. Maybe hope. I checked my compass, marked the direction, and started toward it. I moved slow, conserving energy, keeping my breathing shallow. The heat was climbing again. Felt different now, more hostile. Like it wasn't just around me but on me, pressing down, cooking me from outside and in. By midday, my tongue was thick. My pack felt like it had doubled in weight. My legs didn't move right. Every step required focus. Every shadow looked like it might be something useful. But the glint was gone. No matter how far I walked, I couldn't find it again. I reached the spot I thought I'd seen it, just another rock shelf. Nothing there. I stood there, swaying a little, hands on my hips, trying not to feel the panic crawl up my throat. I knew what was happening. Dehydration, heat exhaustion. I needed water now. I took out my emergency map and tried to trace the dry washes. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they lead to water sources that aren't marked. Springs, seepages, even pools caught in rock depressions. I picked one that looked promising and followed the slope down. It was brutal. Sharp rocks underfoot, loose gravel. I slipped 3 times, cutting my palm once when I tried to brace. Blood welled up, bright against the dust. I wiped it on my shirt and kept going. No water, just dry, crusted dirt and broken branches. Even the lizards were gone. That night, I didn't set up camp. I just curled under my pack behind a rock outcrop and tried not to think. My lips were splitting worse. My skin felt tight. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. I had 1 protein bar left. I chewed it slowly, even though every bite stuck to my mouth like glue. Sleep was worse that night, feverish. My thoughts spun in circles. I dreamed of water, of walking into a cool stream, of rain falling so hard it soaked my clothes. I woke up reaching for something that wasn't there. Day 3 was the worst. I could barely walk in a straight line. My legs trembled. My vision blurred at the edges. I started to hear things that weren't real. The flap of wings, the burble of a stream that turned out to be wind through stone. I knew if I didn't find help that day, I'd have to hit the beacon. But I didn't want to, not just out of pride, but because I wasn't even sure if I'd make it long enough for help to arrive. Even with a rescue team, finding someone out here could take a day or more. I followed a wash down and down, slipping more now, falling hard once on my knee. It throbbed with each step. Then, mid-afternoon, I saw something strange. Plastic bag, crinkled, stuck under a rock. It was dirty, sun-bleached, but human. And near it, a beer can, empty, rusted. I dropped my pack and scanned the area. There, beyond a boulder, something that wasn't natural. A shape, flat edges, a square frame, a structure. I limped over, half crawling, and found it. An old hunting blind, made of plywood and sheet metal, half collapsed, forgotten by whoever built it. And next to it, on a ledge of stone, a water cache, plastic jugs. 3 of them. 2 were dry, but the third, I picked it up and felt the weight. Sloshing. I fumbled the cap open and sniffed. Plastic, dust, but no rot. I tipped it to my mouth and drank. Gulped. Didn't care. Warm as bathwater, but clean. I sat down and cried. That night, I stayed in the blind. Cramped, full of spiders, half-rotted, but shelter. I drank again, ate the last of my food, slept hard and deep. The next day, I hit the beacon. It took search and rescue almost 20 hours to reach me. When they found me, I'd lost over 12 pounds. My body was sunburned, cracked, bruised. My blood pressure was a mess, but I was alive. They said I was lucky. I don't think it was luck. It was plastic, trash, human garbage left behind and forgotten. That's what saved me. Now, when I hike, I carry extra water. Always, even if it weighs me down. And every time I see a piece of trash in the wild, I don't curse it like I used to. Sometimes it's the only sign that someone was here and made it out. I'd been solo hiking for years, never considered myself anything special, just careful. I liked the remoteness. I liked the way my mind emptied out after the first couple miles. I liked moving forward without needing to talk or think too much. I kept my hikes between 2 and 4 days, always planned routes that looped. Never out and backs. Something about doubling back always made me feel exposed. I liked to keep moving forward. That October I chose a new stretch, a lesser-known loop that cut through the side canyons of the Rubies. Steep, rocky terrain. The kind of landscape where cell service evaporates and your own breathing is the loudest thing around. I started on a Thursday morning. Blue skies, dry air. Cool enough to need a hoodie, but not cold enough to bite. My gear was basic but solid. I'd been doing this long enough to know what to pack. Tent, sleeping bag, layered clothing, jet boil, MREs, bear spray. Not because of bears out here, but because of cats. A sidearm too, not that I liked relying on it. Never had to use it, and I hoped I never would. By noon, I was deep in it. The rocks in these parts don't roll smooth like hills. They just twist, shear up out of the dirt like they don't want you there. The ground is hard and unreliable. The trails, what little there are, vanish sometimes into nothing but scree and cracked stone. But that's what I was there for. By sunset, I made camp in a rocky basin between 2 narrow ridges. I had a decent view of the sky, the kind of view that makes you forget to eat. I pitched the tent on the flattest patch I could find and got the little camp stove going. As I ate, I watched the shadows creep. The way they stretch and morph in the mountains always feels unnatural. Like time moves differently up there. That first night was quiet. No wind, no bugs. Just the hiss of the stove cooling off and the occasional shifting of gravel as the ground settled with the falling temperature. I slept deep, woke up to frost on the inner walls of the tent. Day 2 was where things started to shift. The air felt different. Still dry, still cold, but heavier somehow. Not storm heavy, still heavy. I don't know how else to say it. It was like the air had weight behind it. Like walking through it took just a bit more effort. I pushed forward anyway. The trail, if you could call it that, bent down into a rocky ravine. Not a deep one, maybe 20 feet down, but narrow and full of boulders. You had to hop from stone to stone in some places, and every footfall echoed. About an hour into that stretch, I stopped. Not because I was tired, not because I needed water. I stopped because something felt wrong. At first, I couldn't explain it. There was nothing to see, but I had that sense, that primal warning in your blood that your body knows something before your brain can explain it. Like a splinter in your nerves. I scanned the rocks around me. Nothing moved. But then I looked again, and I saw something that didn't quite make sense. At first, it looked like the rocks were shifting. Not in a dramatic way, just a flicker like heat shimmer on pavement. A blending that didn't register right in my eyes. My brain kept trying to snap it into place like a puzzle piece that almost fits. And then I realized what I was looking at. The rocks weren't moving. A mountain lion was. It had been crouched there the whole time, on a large slab maybe 10 feet to my left, half in shadow. Its color matched the stone so perfectly it looked designed for it. Every hair of its coat faded into the background. The only thing that gave it away was the eyes. That cold, unblinking yellow, wide open, focused entirely on me. And it was low, flattened to the rock, muscles locked, ears angled back, tail completely still. I hadn't heard it. Not one sound, and that scared me more than anything. Not the eyes, not the power behind those legs, but the silence it carried. That an animal that size could be that close without making a single noise, without me even knowing until I stared directly at it. I didn't move, I didn't run. Everyone knows that's the worst thing you can do. I kept still, and we stared at each other, for seconds, then a minute, then longer. My legs started to shake. Not from fear at first, but from holding still on uneven rock. The cat didn't blink, didn't breathe hard, didn't twitch, just watched. And in that moment I felt it, not panic, not terror, something quieter, something colder. I realized how wrong I was out here, How human bodies don't belong in places like this. Not really. We think we do because we bring our tools and our boots and our protein bars. But in that moment, I wasn't a hiker. I was just meat on legs standing in something else's home. Eventually, the lion did move, but not the way I expected. It didn't run. It didn't leap. It just shifted back a few inches, almost lazily. It stepped down off the rock, turned away, and melted into the stone like smoke. One step, two, and it vanished. Not down a trail, not behind a tree, just into the rocks. And it was gone. I stood there for another 5 minutes, barely breathing. Then I sat, right there on the ground. I didn't care about dirt or bugs. I sat and let my hands shake. When I finally got moving again, I walked differently, slower, lighter. I didn't use my headphones. I didn't let my mind drift. I stayed in the moment, every step, every sound. I camped that night under a natural rock outcrop, no tent. I needed to be able to see. I kept my flashlight on low, my sidearm on my chest, and I didn't sleep more than a few minutes at a time. Nothing visited me that night. No sounds, no shadows, but I still felt watched. The next day, I cut the loop short. Instead of finishing the full 4-day plan, I followed a creek downhill and found an old game trail that veered toward the main gravel access road. Took me an extra few hours, but I didn't care. I needed out. When I finally got back to the truck, I didn't feel relief. I felt changed. It's hard to explain that part. Not trauma, not fear, just awareness. Before that trip, I'd always felt like I understood the wild. After that trip, I understood that I don't. That mountain lion never attacked me. It didn't have to. It let me see it. And that was the worst part. It chose to show itself. For how long had it followed me? How many times had I walked right past it, thinking I was alone? How many others had it watched who never even knew? I still hike sometimes. Never alone now. I carry heavier gear. I talk louder on trails. I watch the rocks like they're alive, because sometimes they are. And when you finally see the shape in the stone, when your eyes catch up to what your blood already knows, it's too late to pretend you're in control. I've done a lot of solo hikes. I know that sounds like a red flag to some people. I get it. No backup, no one to help if things go south. But I always came prepared. I followed the rules. I let people know where I'd be. I carried a GPS beacon. I stayed on the trails. I didn't cut corners. I didn't mess around. Started off like all the others. I parked the truck at the pull-off by the river, just outside of a trailhead that branches into the old growth up north of the valley. This wasn't a famous trail, but it had enough foot traffic to stay maintained by volunteers and the occasional ranger patrol. It was early fall. Leaves still clung to the trees, but the air had a dry chill to it, crisp, thin. I'd planned for a 3-day solo hike. Not a survivalist thing, just a long walk, fresh air, some time away from traffic and lights and screens. I packed my usual gear: a lightweight tent, food for 4 days, bear spray, knife, compass, backup batteries, solar charger, and water filtration tools. The first day was uneventful in all the best ways. Blue sky, dry ground, and the kind of silence that presses in on your ears when you're miles from the nearest car engine. I crossed 2 other hikers that day, both heading back. They waved. One looked like he had a bit of a limp. I thought nothing of it. Knees go bad. Shoes rub wrong. Nothing weird. I camped the first night about 10 miles in, near a small stream. I made a simple dinner, filtered water, and tucked into my tent after dark. No cell service, but I could get weak GPS pings, enough to let my beacon send its check-in. I woke around midnight to the sound of rustling. Nothing out of the ordinary. Small animals. A raccoon, maybe a possum nosing around. I didn't unzip the tent. No point. They'd leave. I lay there, watching shadows from the moonlight ripple across the inside of the nylon. Then I saw a puff of movement, a strange ballooning shape against the tent wall. Fast, jerky. It looked like something small trying to look big. Cat, maybe, back arched, fur fluffed. It made me grin in the dark. It looked so ridiculous. A tiny shape making itself bigger. And then it was gone, quick as it came. The next morning, I looked for prints but saw nothing clear in the leaf litter. I packed up and moved on. The second day, I planned to cut deeper into the backcountry. There's a spot high on a ridge where you can see all the way across the valley to the other peaks. I wanted to make it there before sundown. The climb wasn't easy, but I liked the burn in my legs and the sweat cooling on my neck. Around midday, I saw something off the trail. It looked like a clump of fur. I stepped closer. It was a dead porcupine, stripped open, guts gone, quills broken, scattered. Whatever killed it hadn't eaten most of the meat, just tore it open. That wasn't normal. Predators don't waste meat like that unless they're desperate, sick, or trying to kill competition. Or if it's not a predator that did it. There were prints around the body. They weren't clear, but they weren't big. Small, almost human-looking. Too wide in the forefoot. Not raccoon. Not possum. Almost like a monkey's hand. That stopped me for a second. There aren't monkeys here, obviously. Maybe a trick of the erosion. Water distorts tracks. I didn't want to spook myself, so I moved on. That night, I made it to the ridge. The sun dropped in slow motion across the trees. Everything gold and quiet. I set up camp, made dinner, and watched the light fade. And then again, rustling. Not unusual, but I got that gut feeling this time. The sound was wrong. Not the soft snuffling of a deer or a rodent. It was closer, quicker, then still. Then a faint sound like breathing. Shallow, reedy. I stayed still in my tent, listening. Then, just like the night before, a shape pushed against the fabric. But this time it wasn't small. It was big, way too big. Puffed up like an animal trying to scare a predator, like a cat doubling its size. But this time the thing doing it wasn't cute. It didn't back away. It hovered. The tent wall bowed in. Something leaned hard against it. I could see where fingers, long ones, spread against the nylon. Then a second set, lower, like something crouched, trying to make itself taller, bigger, more intimidating. It was mimicking the same behavior animals do to appear threatening. Except this one was doing it to me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe hard. I didn't make a sound. Whatever it was, it pressed there for at least a full minute, and then slowly it withdrew. No snorting, no shuffling. Just silence. I stayed awake for the rest of the night. I didn't unzip the tent. I didn't move, just stared at the pale light of the moon filtering through the mesh. Come morning, I found prints again. Fresh ones. Same shape. Same weird width in the forefoot. But this time I saw toe impressions. For toes. No claws. No pads. Flat. Like a human child's foot, but shorter. Broader. I was already packing by the time I registered what that meant. I left the ridge without eating. I moved fast, pushing past the brush, not stopping to admire views. I just needed to get back to the main trail, to somewhere other people might be, even if I had to backtrack the whole route. Around late afternoon, I passed the porcupine carcass again, or what was left of it. Something had moved it, dragged it across the trail, half hidden now in ferns. Something played with it. I didn't stop to check. I kept moving. By nightfall, I made it close to where I'd camped the first night. My feet were shot. My knees ached. I knew I had to rest. I didn't want to. Every nerve in me screamed to just keep walking. But I had no choice. I pitched the tent by instinct, fingers numb and clumsy, and collapsed inside. That night was worse than the others. The sounds started earlier. Low crunching in the leaves, twigs snapping, then silence, then more crunching. It circled the tent. I heard what sounded like hands brushing fabric. Not claws, not paws, fingers. It didn't press up this time. It just hovered close, over and over again. There was a low sound like a breath, but not from lungs. It sounded fake, rehearsed, like it was imitating a breath but not doing it right. Like a kid practicing how to sound scary. There was a small, rhythmic clicking sound, too, like nails or maybe bones tapping against each other. I lay there until sunrise, clutching the bare spray, never sleeping. At first light, I broke camp and forced my legs to keep going. I was less than 10 miles from the road, maybe 4 hours at a hard pace. I didn't see anything the next day, but I heard it. at random spots in the woods, always behind me, faint and distant, twigs snapping, not like an animal walking, but like something mimicking the sound of walking. Then silence. Then again, 10 minutes later, like it wanted me to know it was there. I didn't stop, not even to drink. I got back to the trailhead by early afternoon. I could see my truck down the slope, bright in the sun like a lighthouse. My feet were blistered. My whole body shook. I didn't feel relief. Not yet. I had to get down the slope, cross the river, get in the truck, and lock the doors. Halfway down, I saw it. Not clearly, just a glimpse. It was standing maybe 30 feet off trail, behind a wide cedar trunk. It didn't hide completely. It wanted to be seen. It was short, not more than 4 feet tall, grayish skin, thin. Its body didn't look built for the cold, but it had hunched shoulders and long limbs, arms too long. Its fingers were curled against its chest, like it was clutching something red. It was puffed up. Its chest was expanded, shoulders high, limbs stretched wide, just like a small animal trying to scare off a predator. It stared right at me. Its face wasn't like anything I could describe easily. It had no fur, just folds of skin, dark eyes that didn't blink, and a mouth that hung slightly open. I thought I saw teeth, not sharp, flat, human-looking. It shook its shoulders once, like a bear bluff charging, and then it vanished into the trees. I ran the last quarter mile to the truck, got in, slammed the doors, peeled off down the gravel with rocks spitting out from under the tires. I didn't stop until I was 20 miles down the road. That was last fall. I haven't hiked alone since. I haven't even gone near that valley. I don't know what it was. I don't pretend to, but I keep thinking about how it behaved, how it wasn't trying to eat me. It wasn't hunting me. It was acting scared. It was trying to look bigger than it was, the way a possum opens its mouth, the way a bird spreads its wings, the way a cat arches its back. And that's what still gets me, because if something that's strange, that unnatural, that wrong is scared out there, what the hell is it scared of? I've always found it funny when animals puff themselves up to look bigger than they are. A rabbit standing tall on its back feet, hair fluffed, trying to scare a fox away, or a cat arching its back, tail high, pretending to be some monster when it barely weighs 10 pounds soaking wet. It's cute, really. Something so small trying so hard to seem dangerous, harmless. But I've never thought much about how that looks in reverse. Not until last fall. Not until that hike. It was early October. The air was dry, and the leaves had just started to shift from green to amber and red. I had the day off, and I wanted to make the most of it before the weather turned. I picked a trail I hadn't done before, out near Elk River. A lesser-known one. No signs, just a thin dirt path that curled upward into the mountains. I parked off the side of the road, zipped up my jacket, and started walking. I brought the usual pack with water, some snacks, a knife, and a flashlight. I don't hike with music. I like hearing the world around me, the crunch of my boots on leaves, the wind slipping through trees, the chatter of squirrels. There's something grounding about it. I've always said nature is honest. The trail started steep. Right away, I was climbing switchbacks, stepping over fallen branches and slick patches of mud. After 30 minutes, I was warm enough to pull off my jacket and tie it around my waist. The woods around me were thick, mostly pines and oaks, and the path felt old, like it hadn't seen many hikers lately, which suited me fine. I hiked for about 2 hours without anything strange happening. I saw a few deer in the distance. A couple of birds fluttered across the path. I stopped once to eat a protein bar and sip water. I was about to start moving again when I noticed something about the woods had changed. It's hard to describe, but it's something you feel before you notice it. The way the air sits, the way your ears almost ring with silence. The birds had stopped. No rustle in the leaves, no squirrel chatter, just stillness. I stood there for a bit, listening. Sometimes that happens when a hawk or coyote is nearby. The forest falls quiet, holding its breath. But I didn't hear any movement, nothing at all. I clicked my tongue, listened. Still nothing, so I kept going. The path sloped downward now. It twisted between rocks and narrow trees, and the deeper I went, the more that stillness pressed in. At one point, I stepped over a line of claw marks in the dirt. Not fresh, not deep, probably from a raccoon or a porcupine. Still, they made me pause. Another 30 minutes passed, and I was in deep now. The trees were tall and dense, blocking out most of the light. It wasn't dark, but it felt dim, faded, and then I heard it, a rustle, off to my right, not quick or light, slow, heavy. I stopped, came again, a dragging noise, followed by the soft crunch of leaves. Then silence. I scanned the trees. Nothing moved. I didn't smell anything strange, didn't hear breathing, but I knew something was nearby, big enough to quiet the forest, big enough to make everything else stay hidden. I told myself it was probably a deer, or an elk, maybe even a bear, but the longer I stood there, the more it didn't feel right. Then, just ahead on the trail, I saw movement. A figure, tall, white. It moved with a kind of grace that didn't match its size. Not crashing through branches, not stomping, just gliding, like it didn't care about the noise because it knew it didn't need to hide. I couldn't make out the details at first. It stood maybe 50 feet away, half covered in brush and shadow. Then it moved slightly to the side and I got a better look. It wasn't a bear, not an elk. It was a person, or I thought it was, but taller, broader, too tall really. I've seen big guys in my life, 6'6", maybe 6'8". This wasn't that. This was something else. He was covered in something, fur, maybe a ghillie suit, I don't know. But his shoulders were massive. His arms hung low, and he didn't move like a man. There was something animal about it. The way it watched me, the way it just stood. I stood still. My heart was hammering now, my breath shallow. I didn't move, didn't even blink. He tilted his head, just slightly, and then he puffed up. That's the only way I can describe it. Like when a cat makes itself look twice as big. He didn't grow, obviously, but his chest expanded. His stance widened. He spread his arms just a little, enough to show mass. Power. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a man. This wasn't a lost hiker or some hunter in a weird suit. This was something trying to scare me. And not because it was afraid. Because it could. Because I was the small animal now. I was the thing out of place. The thing too weak to fight back. And he wanted me to know it. I took one slow step back. Then another. He didn't move. Just kept watching. Then I turned and started walking. Fast. But not running. Not yet. My body wanted to sprint, but something deep inside told me that was the worst thing I could do. I walked. The path twisted uphill again and I followed it. My pack bounced. My breath grew loud. I didn't look back, but I heard him. Behind me. Not close, but not far. Moving. Matching my pace. I turned off the trail. Scrambled up the hill. Through brush and thorns. My arms got scratched. My pants tore. I didn't care. I just needed to get higher. Needed distance. I climbed until my legs burned. Until my lungs screamed. And when I couldn't climb anymore, I ducked behind a fallen tree and waited. I stayed there for maybe 20 minutes. Listening. Nothing. I peeked over the log. The woods looked empty. No movement. No sound. So I moved again. Slower this time. Circling back toward where I thought the trail was. I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to get turned around. I marked a tree with my knife. Then another. Left pieces of snack wrapper wedged in bark every few hundred feet. Just in case. After what felt like hours, I found the trail again. It was dusk now. The light fading fast. I followed it downhill, never stopping, never slowing. Every few minutes, I glanced over my shoulder. But he never showed again. I made it back to the car just before dark. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I climbed in and just sat there, staring at the trailhead, waiting to see movement in the trees. But there was nothing. I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a guy, some mountain man playing games. Maybe it was something else. But I know this. Whatever it was, it wanted me to feel what a rabbit feels when a fox circles. What a bird feels when a cat crouches low. That sick fear, that helplessness, the shame of realizing you are prey. And that's not cute. That's not funny. That's not a story you laugh off. It's a reminder. In the wild, the bigger animal decides who gets to walk away. And that day, I was lucky he let me. I've always loved hiking. Not for fitness, not for Instagram, not even for the thrill. It's more like a kind of escape, a quiet one. The kind where I could hear my boots scraping against dry leaves and the sound of my own breath, and nothing else. Where I live in the mountains, that silence is a luxury. It's not hard to find a trail. You can pick one in almost any direction and find yourself in thick woods within 20 minutes. I've always preferred the lesser-known trails, the ones that haven't been carved out too wide or tamed too much by foot traffic. I don't mind climbing over fallen trees, slipping in mud, or brushing through overgrown bramble. If I can feel like I'm the only person who's been on that trail for months, I'm where I want to be. That morning was cold, but the air was clean and dry. The sky had that grayish-white haze that never really lets the sun shine fully but still keeps everything lit. It was late October, that time of year when the wind starts to carry that sharp edge and everything smells like dry earth, wet bark, and dying leaves. I had packed light, some trail mix, a couple of protein bars, my knife, my usual first aid kit, and one water bottle. I hadn't planned to be gone long, just a few hours out and back. Maybe find a good high spot to sit for a bit. No real destination. I parked on a gravel pull-off next to a narrow trailhead I had passed dozens of times but never actually followed. It didn't even have a sign, just a break in the trees with a faint path cutting through. I didn't have a map for it. I just figured I'd keep my phone GPS on and pay attention. Besides, I had a good sense of direction and never strayed too far from where I started. About an hour in, the trail became rougher. There was a heavy patch of downed limbs, a few steep slopes slick with damp moss, and the air started to cool even more as the trees grew thicker and taller. It got quiet, not silent. There were birds overhead, some chipmunks darting through brush, but no distant traffic hum, no overhead planes. Just forest sounds. Felt nice. Then I noticed something strange. The usual signs of deer or smaller animals were missing. No scat, no fresh tracks, no bark rubbed off saplings. Just silence and stillness. The kind that makes your brain lean in just a little. I ignored it at first. It was an off-trail area. Maybe not many deer passed through here, but I remember that feeling in my chest. That tightness that starts to build when something isn't sitting right. A little after noon, I found a high ridge that overlooked a shallow dip in the woods. I stopped there to eat, sitting on a flat rock, legs stretched out, sun hitting just enough to warm my back. It was perfect, until I heard that first crack of a branch. Not a small one, not the kind a squirrel makes when it scurries. It was deep, sharp, and slow, like something heavy stepped wrong. I froze. My head snapped toward the sound, and I scanned through the trees. I saw nothing at first, just bark and branches and dry brush. But then I saw movement, low and fast. A dark shape sliding between tree trunks. Big, too big for a deer, too low for a moose, too fast for a person. My stomach sank before I even fully understood what it was. The weight of the steps, the deliberate pauses, the way it moved through the trees without caring about noise. That wasn't a predator stalking. That was something that knew it didn't have to hide. It was a bear, and not a small one. I couldn't make out its full size at first. Just the movement. The fur looked dark brown, almost black. The shoulders were wide. It moved with that heavy, swaying rhythm you only really recognize when you've seen it before. I knew enough about black bears from living here. Most don't want anything to do with people. They'll huff, maybe bluff charge, but usually they run. I also knew enough to tell when that rulebook might not apply. This one wasn't running. It moved in a wide curve around the ridge where I sat. I slowly stood up, didn't run, didn't make a sound. I just watched it as it stayed half visible behind the trees. Not coming closer, not backing off, just pacing. I started backing away slowly, step by step, eyes forward. The trail I had followed in was behind me, but I didn't want to turn my back. I had to trust my legs to know where they were stepping. I made it 30 feet before I lost sight of it completely. That might have been worse. Now every sound was louder, every shift in wind, every rustle of leaves. I walked faster, careful but steady. My boots dug into the soft ground and snapped twigs. My backpack felt too heavy, even though I knew it wasn't. I didn't run. I kept moving, turning my head every few steps to check behind me. But I didn't see it again. The trail narrowed as I got lower, heading back toward the general direction of the car, though I hadn't marked the entrance as well as I should have. My GPS had one bar. I opened it just long enough to get a rough direction, then shut it off again to save battery. Then I heard another sound, this time behind me to the right, closer than before. A rush of air through leaves, a snap, then silence. I turned. Nothing. I waited, my ears strained. Then I saw it, 20, maybe 30 feet away, just far enough that I couldn't hear it breathing, but close enough to see its chest moving as it stared at me. It stood still behind a tree, head low, watching. I couldn't move. It didn't lunge. It didn't growl. It didn't rear up. It just stood there. I had read stories before about bears shadowing people, not attacking, not leaving, just following. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of hunger, maybe something else. I raised my arms slowly, not high, just enough to make myself look bigger, like every book says. Then I backed away again. One step, then two, then three. It didn't follow. I turned and started walking fast, not running, just fast, careful steps. My breath came quicker. I could feel sweat running down my back now, even though the air was cold. My pack bumped with every step. I didn't dare stop to drink, didn't eat, didn't rest. After another half mile or so, the trail flattened. I recognized a fallen birch log from earlier. I was close, maybe 10 minutes out. That's when the third noise came, this time to my left. A short burst of brush being pushed through, something quick and heavy. He was circling again. This wasn't random anymore. It wasn't some bear passing through. He had tracked me. He was watching me. He was interested. I didn't know if it was hunger or just that I smelled like peanut butter and almonds, or that I'd crossed too close to something of his. Maybe a den. Maybe cubs. I didn't know, and I didn't want to find out. But I felt it now. That panic that crawls into your bones when you realize you might not be the one in control anymore. That nature doesn't care if you make it out. That you are not at the top of the food chain out here. I started yelling, not words, just noise. Loud, sharp, guttural. Hoped the volume would scare him. Made myself wide. Snapped a stick against a tree. Banged my metal water bottle against a rock. Waited. No movement. I waited longer. Then I walked. 10 minutes felt like 30. Every minute I thought I'd see him again. That wide chest. That black face between the trees. But I didn't. Not again. I found the road finally. My car sitting just as I left it, cold and quiet and completely useless as protection. But I've never been so relieved to see it. I got in and locked the door. I sat there in silence, my hands shaking, the keys still in my lap. I looked back at the trail once, then drove home. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I haven't gone back on that trail. I still hike, but not there. I still carry the same knife, but I added bear spray. I learned more. I don't eat on trail anymore. I don't take shortcuts. I don't assume a quiet forest means a safe one. That bear was real. I don't know if he wanted to hurt me or just scare me. Maybe I walked too close to something I shouldn't have. But what stuck with me most wasn't the fear. It was the way he moved. Like he knew that whole forest belonged to him. Like I wasn't an intruder, just something passing through, allowed to leave only because he decided I could. That's the part one think about now when I hike alone. And when I take my dog out at night and hear a twig snap in the dark. I never assume it's just the wind.